Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelson, professional horse trainer, and with me is my co-host, Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor. And today's topic is what the heck is fawning?
Morning.
Fawning. And what fawning is in a nutshell is it's a known defensive strategy for people and horses
Mm.
when we're under stress. And it's kind of a complicated defensive strategy. So, like we've all heard of fight and flight, just like the nervous system. Fight and flight is our kind of healthy, normal response to stress. And then they've added, psychologists, they have added freezing and fawning as sort of the next layer of a more complicated version of dealing with stress. And the last known defensive strategy is what I talked about with Dr. Hancock, called shutdown, which is actually a dorsal vagal state in the nervous system. So we have fight and flight, and it's kind of a hierarchy. Fight and flight
Mm.
are, normal, healthy expressions of being under stress or for short-term survival, right? Fight and flight. And then there's fawning and freezing, which are kind of, I guess, a step deeper, you could say, than fight and flight.
I
It's
think
like,
it's just a more layers that we've missed over the years. We just,
so freezing and fawning are defensive strategies for really intense stress for immediate survival or chronic.
the
When,
chronic stress is
yeah.
what I see in people.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about before is stress can kind of accumulate like a bank account. And Lily's here again today. Sherry, you're helping with the podcast. Um, so fawning and freezing are sort of opposite expressions, but they're both kind of a type of panic. Like it's different
Mm.
than just fight or flight. It's two versions of something that's more significant from accumulated stress or because of the situation sort of demands it. And then I don't think we need to talk about shutdown, but fawning is sort of new. And I will say, you start to describe fawning, people don't recognize it as a defensive strategy.
Right.
And I really wanted to talk about it because I see a lot of horses stuck there. I
Hmm.
see people get stuck there too. Like I might come across it maybe more frequently than you do because sometimes a horse that is in the fawn defensive strategy, we call them well trained. We call them push button
Obedient,
obedient, right?
obedient, schoolmasters.
And then it happens, I think, with it's a way of managing stress that I think as a woman might be more common to women than men because it
Mm.
involves, pleasing others. It involves placating, sort of working around everybody else while your emotions are sort of suppressed or put on hold.
Existing, you're in existing mode.
hmm So
Yeah.
that can be how we deal with like chronic stress, chronic demands, or even discomfort, trying to push through discomfort, going, let me get everybody else taken care of, even though I'm suffering through it,
Hmm.
right? And so I see it a lot with like in riders, it's the classic sort of placating horses with treats, going, but I gave you all these treats. Why aren't you being good?
Yeah, let's do that with
Right?
a
Why are you
two-year-old
being
kid, right?
naughty? I'm giving you treats.
I'm giving you treats.
Yeah. And it made me, I wanted to talk about it too, because you had brought up, you had a stressful week, and during that week, you couldn't work any of the horses.
Right.
And what I'm used to now, which is what you're used to, is even when my horses have a chunk of time off because life gets in the way, we pick up where we left off.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I shared that with you. It was amazing, that they retained, and maybe it was also the state I was in when I arrived at the occasion.
no, because it catches me by surprise now, but I
Mm,
still hear all the time, I can't take time off and have a setback, or I have to take time off. Are we going to be starting all over? Because that's sort of what normally happens in traditional training. If we're
wow,
thinking in terms of condition responses, cues, um, obedience, if we're thinking
wow.
in terms of dominance and submission or punishment and obedience, then as soon as the horse has time off, it's like all the training just evaporated and you feel
It's
like you're
kind of like
starting over.
you're holding them and not you're holding them in a frame, shall we say. And if that frame doesn't exist for them, they don't know how
Right.
to
So time
manage.
off, it is like starting over. And
Wow.
that was one of the things that really led me down the path of training that I do. I think you said the same about leaving massage and moving towards Alexander technique, is I got tired of that feeling of going, why isn't the training
Good
sticking?
point.
You
Why
know,
aren't
why
people
aren't,
getting better when I help them on the table? And now I know why, because it's not supportive. It's not,
it's
I
not
maybe,
empowering them,
yeah, it's not empowering them for self-improvement.
right? And that's what I
Yeah.
see with horses is when we're thinking of dominance and submission or just looking for obedience. And I go, so when horses are compliant, when they're obedient, but they're still feeling tense or anxious, they're not really learning what we're hoping they learn. And
Well, they can't
that's the
because they've
difference.
shut down. They've shut down. Yeah. And it's the same with people.
Yeah. And so fawning, when people tell me they have a push button horse, what I usually see, the top layer, all that person is seeing is that the horse is so obedient that they're anticipating the maneuvers. They're anticipating the pattern of training. They're anticipating the pattern of the competition, right? They're offering a shoulder in, or they're offering a lead change, or they're kind of doing it, giving a condition response before we even
Wow.
give the cue. And people love that because they think
Oh,
the
the
horse is
ego, they love
highly
that.
obedient.
Our ego loves that.
Yeah, so all that we see on the surface is we have a highly obedient horse that's really well trained, quote unquote, and push button, quote unquote. And when I look at that same horse, if we look a little deeper, I go, what's driving that behavior is anxiety and tension in combination, right? Anxious and tense. So then the next thing I hear, or the reason I get called in for rehab, is because that super well-trained push button horse that turns on a dime is
Mhm.
randomly blowing up or is getting ulcers, having feed issues because their opinions and real emotions are being suppressed. That's what
Very
fawning
much
is.
so. That
So,
would be like my old hunter jumper that I got off the track when I would take him in the show ring because I used to be this micromanager. You know,
yeah.
he would buck me off. But my friend, who was this laid back rider and, just kind of went with the flow, he was like, "Oh, you're cool. I can go with this." And
Yeah.
she would go and win everything on him. So I finally just gave him to her. It's like, take him.
Well, and I have my horse, Rafalco, who came out of doing upper level dressage competition, but developed navicular changes and ring bone by the time he was about 9 or 10. When I first started riding him, he was a classic extreme fawning defense.
Mhm. I agree with that.
So he was always a little fast, a little anxious, and if I moved, shifted my leg, moved a rein, adjusted my body, he would throw a half pass at me. He would, throw some maneuver at me or try
Poor
as,
guy.
it was like he just kept sort of offering. And I've had that before. Sometimes I've had like a Western trained horse, and I'm trying to rehab a lameness issue, and they keep throwing spins and turns and different things at me. And I'm going, no, no, no. Let's just walk straight. Let's try straight on a circle. And the horse will just keep offering maneuver
Yeah,
after
that's a good
maneuver.
point. Is this what you want? Is this it? Is
Yeah.
this it?
Yeah. And that can even be behavior like coming to the mounting block and standing rigidly still, right? Sort
With
of
big open eyes,
anxious.
like it's
Yeah.
just and the
Neck,
high head.
right.
Ooh,
High head, neck short. But I'm
yep.
gonna I'm gonna stand here. I'm gonna stand here. I
I'm
can
being
do it.
good.
I can do it. Right. And that's what fawning is really an avoidance. It's like the motto is sort of, I'll do anything to keep you happy, or I'll do anything to avoid getting in trouble, or I'll do anything until just, so you just leave me alone, right? And then what's happening is all those repressed opinions and emotions have
Mhm.
kind of a slow buildup internally. And so we also call it passive aggressive
Okay.
because that's what passive aggressive is fawning kind of in the extreme, whether it's people or horses, because those same horses can have a huge overreaction to a small stress trigger all of a sudden, like sort of random and suddenly blowing up out of nowhere. Or they're the ones that sort of wait and opportunistically can become aggressive.
Wow.
Or
Yeah, give me an example of that. What do you mean by that? What would that look like?
like horses and other huge animals that kill their trainers.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. That's pretty aggressive.
that's pretty aggressive. And
Hmm.
it's been known to happen a lot.
I've seen videos of horses
Hmm.
attacking people. It's just bizarre, just like behind their back and wham.
Yeah. And so sometimes being obedient, but internally sort of feeling this buildup of resentment is going to come out as extreme aggression, violent aggression, right? So, like stallions suddenly turning on their handler and attacking them, or they'll literally wait until that person that they resent is close by and then strike or kick or bite or do something pretty aggressive. It can also be the horse that kind of holds it together and then all of a sudden sort of bolts blindly, crashing through fences, running away as fast as they can, as far as they can, or
Wow.
crashing through something because either the situation was just too much or that internal sort of repressed anxiety it's just got to come out at a
It's going
certain
to come out
point.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Where probably it's kind of like for healthy horses, I'll see, little bleeps of expression
Hmm. Or a
from
little
my horses.
opinion.
A
Yeah.
little opinion, and it just makes me laugh. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah.
It's
And
I
because
don't get
we,
the big explosions. Okay, I have an example. How about this? I see the big explosions and running and bucking when I am not with them. When
sometimes once
they're
stress is
just
releasing, hmm,
yeah.
yeah,
But when I'm working with them, they're usually very much with me and on board, on page.
that's not fawning.
Yeah.
That's not fawning. So what fawning is sort of like a terse obedience, tense, rigid,
Okay.
anxious, saying like, you want me to walk? I'll walk. You want me to trot? I'll trot. You want me to canter? I can canter. I can go left. I can go right. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? It's
Oh,
like
wow. Okay.
it's that while you're working because they're just trying to get
Oh.
through. They're just trying to sort of
They're just trying to
survive
get
the
through
work
that hour.
session. Yeah.
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 Just get through the hour. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so because in the horse business, it's still so prevalent to think in terms of obedience and punishment. If the horse doesn't do what we want, we punish them until they comply. That's still very,
Wow,
very
that's
much out
sad.
there in the world. And the other thought that humans have to show dominance and get horses to be submissive.
Mm.
That's, I've just taken those words out of my vocabulary in training because it's just leads to basically compliance without calmness. I go, whenever you have compliance without calmness, all you're doing is subjugating. And that is what leads to fawning. Whether it's a kid or another person or a horse, it's like that repression of opinion, because, and it usually fawning is what horses adopt to survive because they've had to deal with harsh punishment for expressing fight or flight because
Or
they got
just
snarky.
self-expression. Yeah, or
Right.
even a or what about just disagreeing with the question, disagreeing with what they're being asked to do,
Or even not understanding.
or
It,
not
it's,
understanding? That's
yeah.
huge.
So if a horse bites and we let loose as a punishment, that's the type of thing that can lead to fawning. Like the horse goes, I'll never do that again,
A shutdown.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't change the way they feel about it. It just changes the behavior. And I go, that's
Okay.
what fawning is you get compliant behavior with an underlying not calm energy,
It's a
like
more like what you said, a nervous energy. It's
anxiety or tension. Or it's
okay.
actually kind of a combination of fight and flight. It's both anxiety and tension. Like the anxiety comes out as sort of being busy all the time. Can't
Being
really
busy.
stand still. Can't really
That'd be
focus on one
me.
thing. Busy, busy, busy. Gotta do, 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 do. Oh, fidgeting,
That's interesting
you know.
because I know a lot of type A people that are like that because maybe because of their upbringing
People
that
pleasers, right?
yeah,
People
yeah,
pleasing is fawning. And
yeah.
so, sort of going, whether we like it or not, we feel obligated to please another. That's fawning,
Wow.
especially if we don't like it, but we still
We still and you're
feel
right, it's kind of a way of
compelled
checking out, but I imagine internally there's a lot going on.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, we on the face, on the forefront, it looks okay to everybody, but
That's the other thing that's a little hard to read about
hmm
fawning is because opinions and emotions are repressed, you don't see a lot of body language that expresses the anxiety or the tension. It's a little bit subtle. It's like an
right,
undercurrent of not quite calm, not laid back, not chill, not focused. It's like always looking for what do I need to do next? What's going to keep me out of trouble? What do you want? What do you want?
what
Right?
do you want? What do you want? That's a
Yeah.
good way to remember it. It's
Yeah.
that constant asking. And Plumley was kind of like that. And I wonder, the people pleaser horses also tend to get injured.
That's just it. Because
Yeah,
the thought is never sort of on an authentic self. The focus is always on keeping
external,
the dominant one happy,
external things.
meeting
Yeah.
demands, anything external, but never really assessing how do I really feel about that internally, right?
Wow. Yeah, I think that is very hard to see in horses.
Yeah, and I think women fall into that defensive strategy very frequently because it's part of the conditioning of, taking care of kids and husbands and kind of end up forgetting about ourselves somewhere in the mix.
Right,
Or under stress, getting busy, taking care of everybody else becomes the first priority over self-care. And that's
right.
just really typical of women. Being women, we kind of know that.
Right.
and it's socially acceptable to be that way as well. It's very socially acceptable. So it's often not
Interesting.
recognized as a stress coping mechanism,
Right.
right? But that sort of passive aggressive deal is fawning. It's, and people will say passive aggressive like it's a mental illness. And I go, it's really just adopted
It sounds like a
as
survival strategy.
it
Yeah.
is. It's a survival strategy
Yeah.
that's adopted because people sort of feel like there's no other option. So
Right.
if they've been met harshly when expressing an opinion or making choices, like I think fawning was labeled by psychologists as a defensive strategy specifically for like children in abusive situations. That's what they learn
Good
to
way
do,
to put it. Hmm.
right? And so children who have very limited choice, just like horses, right? That is frequently adopted by children in abusive situations, fawning.
And I actually saw that when I worked doing Alexander work in an elementary school with the kids, and you would hear, the kids aren't learning. Uh, And then I wonder about the stress of the structure because
Right.
there's, stay in line, you do this at this time, you do, and then when we would get them, they would just be all over the map,
Yeah.
because they were allowed to have self-expression in front of us. We
Well,
didn't.
and that's healthy. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like somebody who's really kind of stuck in the fawn strategy, when given a choice over movement, especially, like you move how you want to move, do what you want to do, express what you want to express. A lot of times, the first response is freezing. Like the mind goes
Because they
blank.
don't
They don't
know.
know what to do. They haven't had a choice in such a long time that given a choice can actually increase stress at first. It can
Wow.
increase the level of stress because they've now found a sense of security by sort of orbiting another. And
Yeah.
so, like with horses, because I the way out of fawning is to let choice lead the way, let the horse
Hmm.
choose, right? But what'll happen is that first session or two, the horse will really panic, like freeze,
I've seen
go,
that with
you know,
kids, like in
bound.
the room of kids, some kids would, be able to self-express and other kids would kind of go in the corner and get the deer in the headlights look like
That's freezing.
I
Hmm.
have no clue what to do with myself when I'm given that opportunity.
Yeah, so freezing is motionless with all the same tension and anxiety, but usually like wide eyes, every muscle in the body gets tight. That's freezing, like deer in the headlights.
Right.
Um, and fawning is sort of the opposite expression of freezing, like never stop moving. Hopefully, something you do is going to kind of quiet down the one who's you're trying to please. And so, actually acting out in fight or flight, right? So, flight is just get away from, and it's
Hmm.
tied to anxiety. And fight is move towards. A good offense is the best defense, invade and go on attack with tension, right? And so a person or horse that's kind of healing and starting to resolve fawning or freezing, the only way through that is to see fight and flight, like to really let that expression become overt.
I
And
had that with a rehab horse I had here. He came to me, was extremely aggressive.
yeah.
Always came at me just even to go in his stall with teeth.
And see, that's a horse that is still at even if it's extreme, a horse that's charging you or trying to bite is still at what I would consider a healthy expression, letting you
Hmm.
know in no uncertain
I'm
terms how they
mhm.
feel. But fawning is like kind of subversive stress because it's now covert. It's all under the surface. On the surface, everything appears okay because the one fawning is sort of keeping everything together, but it's with rubber bands and paper clips. It's like a house of cards that could kind of collapse at any time.
So, do these horses go into ulcers or off their feet or,
Oh, that's so interesting you brought that up
those I'm
because
thinking, well, where do they take that energy,
the number one health issue associated with fawning as a strategy for defense are digestive issues.
Well, that
Absolutely.
it's the same thing in people.
Yeah. And
Same
so
thing.
horses will develop ulcers, they'll be more prone to colic. They are either constantly like obsessed with food or they're really picky eaters, kind of one extreme or the other. And they have the most amount of food related stress. Like if feed time is late,
Oh, yeah,
that is highly stressful if you're
I
off schedule with feeding.
I don't mean this in a bad way, but I went to a dressage barn. This was many years ago. They needed somebody like for morning chores, and the number of horses that had on their doors prone to colic and must be fed at 4:30. I was like, wow, what is that all about?
Yeah. So those are horses that aren't dangerous usually because as long as you stay on routine and on schedule, they're very obedient. But there's always this undercurrent of anxiety and tension.
Wow.
So it's like they know exactly how long the training session is supposed to last. They know exactly where training is supposed to happen. And so going for a trail ride might be completely off the menu for that horse
And
because,
yeah, they lose it.
yeah, if you're
Yeah.
outside of the known schedule or work area or the demands of work, like
Mhm.
when I suddenly take a horse like that, well, like I did with mine, and I go, I'm just going to give you a loose rein and you mooch around the arena at whatever speed you need and go where you want to go. I'm just going to sit on you and see what you choose to do. He freaked out. He was like, he would
Right.
trot, canter. He started bolting. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, that's enough of that. But it
Mhm.
was like the stress level really increased and became expressed as soon as a choice was offered.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's kind of scary.
It is, but that's why fawning is a much more complex strategy, is because, and really there's only five strategies that psychologists have, sort of labeled that apply to all animals and all people. It's just how we deal with stress or fear or feeling unsafe, uncomfortable, unstable, right? Then there's a stress response in the nervous system, and then the movement and actions within kind of are, are under a collective strategy. That's what these strategies are, right? So it's not specific actions, it's sort of like a direction of movement, type of movement, types of actions that all go under the heading of these different strategies. But all five of them are different ways for people and animals to express stress, right? So recognizing these is a huge part of training for me because fawning is one of the most unrecognized, fawning and
I would think
shutdown.
so. Because it's not an extreme. So people aren't noticing it. They're not, so they, like you said, oh, we had such a good day today because he was so obedient.
Yeah, that's what people want. And so we often can recognize flight. We call them hot horses, right?
Right?
Or we recognize fight. We call them lazy, snarky horses. And we recognize freeze, deer in the headlight, because that's what happens right before we get bucked off, if we've ever been bucked off. But
Yes.
fawning we think is great. We don't recognize it as a stress response because the horse is doing what we want, or the other person is doing what we want, or the kid is doing what we want. And
And it
so,
comes out like you said with I know with Plumley, my little halflinger, he blew abscesses, and other horses get ulcers or
yeah, usually it's related to digestive type issues,
Mhm.
usually because all of that like churning of the anxiety and the tension they tr are trying to spend that high energy by being busy and doing. But sometimes that's not enough. There's still a slow buildup inside because stress isn't being resolved. That's basically what it means. It's not being resolved to the point that the one fawning feels safe, comfortable, and stable. So until those essential needs are actually met, it's like that slow internal buildup is going to erupt. And
somewhere.
and it either erupts because there was a minor trigger, something unusual, something out of the ordinary, or, and I hear it described this way a lot, out of nowhere for
Out of
no
nowhere.
reason. Out of
My
nowhere
nice,
for
calm
no
horse,
reason,
blah, blah, blah.
suddenly blew up, lost his mind, right? Dangerously. And normally would never do that. That's why they call it passive aggressive. It's mostly passive until it's not,
Yeah,
right? And when it's not, it's usually kind of an extreme action. It's not small. It's going to be kind of a substantial, unsafe action, or either with aggression or just trying to kind of blindly get out of that situation, run away.
wow.
Yeah. So it's a very complex strategy that often isn't even recognized as stress or defensiveness. It's not even like on people's radar. So I end up having to kind of talk about it a lot because what we call a well-trained horse, 9 times out of 10, they're in a fawn defensive strategy. There's that anxiety and tension running the show under the surface. Or at least
Wow.
the ones I meet, because the ones that maybe are authentically happy don't need rehab. I get called in for rehab when it's the fawning defense that people think is very good behavior, very obedient, push button, right? We love that,
Right.
right? But it's kind of like in human terms, it's the teenager who goes out and starts shooting people, right? It's the abused wife who burns down the house or just disappears. And
Right.
so it's like kind of a coping mechanism for stress until something tips the scales. And then finally, that expression of stress is going to come out.
And then
So
it might be to the point of uncontrollable.
usually,
Yeah.
usually it is.
Because if the cat's gotten out of
Mhm.
the bag, the
Yep.
expression is going to have to happen for a while
Yep. And it's kind of
before.
like, that soda bottle has been shaken and shaken and shaken and shaken and no loosening of the lid whatsoever. And it finally just explodes out. Like it can
Wow.
only build up so much internal pressure and then it's just going to blow the lid off. And
Until
that's,
it's all gone, until the expression is finally, I mean, there's got to be some
Mhm.
self-preservation there at some point,
Well, the whole thing is
hopefully.
self-preservation. It's
Yeah,
all self-preservation because it's like deferring how we really feel is one way to guarantee our survival. To please another is a way to ensure our short-term survival,
right.
right? Being obedient, whether even though we hate it or we hate the other, it's like that is guaranteeing short-term survival. But it has a toll on long-term survival. And so just recognizing the five sort of different types of defensive strategies is a big education for a lot of horse owners to go, that's stress. That's a
Right.
sign that my horse feels fear or is unsafe, feels unsafe with me. Like that's a big shock to a lot of people because they thought an obedient horse was sort of it's what we all want. Life is good. My horse is
Especially
obedient. That's what
especially those who
animal
are giving,
training is.
yeah, that are giving treats.
Yeah, like even, and again, that can be sort of related to the fawning defense. Horses that you give them a treat and they go into this high state of anxiety. They become food neurotic,
I have
right?
gotten horses like that where they couldn't figure out, because I don't do that here, um, but didn't know how to function without the treat.
Either that or like I would give Rafalco a treat. He was anticipating it, but he was
That's it.
anticipating
That's what
his,
I was seeing.
yeah, he's anticipating his treat time with all
Yeah.
these anxieties. So he's pawing, he's curling his
Yes.
neck, he's, chomping his mouth and sticking
Yes.
his tongue out and all of those signs that the treat equaled anxiety, not
Yeah,
calmness.
I saw that. Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. So that is
Here, have a piece of sugar to calm you down.
right, but it
That
actually
doesn't make sense.
it actually increases the
It
stress
the
energy.
right.
Right. No, and one of my strategies for sort of dealing with that with food or treats is to just stand there with like a humongous container of healthy treats. Could be carrot slices, could be, hay cube type treats or whatever. But I will sit there and just feed treat after treat after treat after treat until the anxiety finally starts to reduce and getting the treat starts to become associated with calmness. And that's one of the few ways I found to overcome that anxiety reaction to treats or food. They have to have more than they want. Like get to the point that they're so saturated and stuffed with treats that they calm down. Because the
Wow.
onesie, twosie, even six treats is still escalating the anxiety.
I agree with that.
And so I go, it's going to take about 100 treats before they start to calm down. So I just get 100 treats and go, this is what we're going to do. And what most people will do is just no treats, either treats or no treats. And I go, once I get through that initial related food anxiety, after that, I'm very careful that when we give a treat or we give affection, we're reinforcing the emotional state that is happening at the same time.
That's interesting that you brought that up. And I wonder if it also comes with an attachment to the person, because I had a situation with a client and a horse very driven by treats. But when the horse was handed over to me, that totally went away.
It can generalize to a person and the treat.
Yeah,
Yes, it can. Yeah, because it's like horses are masterful at sort of knowing all the different components of what they remember.
of that person and that
Right,
relationship in that situation.
right,
Okay.
right. And that's why a horse that's normally fawning, as soon as they're off routine or in an unfamiliar situation, there's no coping mechanism for that. There's no
That's when they lose
way.
it.
Yeah, and that's when they'll lose it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
And it like you said, it's completely unexpected.
It really catches people off guard because they're
Yeah,
just looking at the first layer. My horse is always so good. What happened? Right? And then we tend to just blame, I don't know, the neighbor, the tractor, the truck, the weather, the wind, whatever. We blame whatever happened to coincide at the same
mhm,
time that the horse blew up. but usually that blow up is the internal explosion, and that might have just been the straw that tipped the scales. It
And
isn't.
that's interesting that you say that because the horses that have been here the longest, I don't see the blow-ups. The
Oh,
newer
yeah.
horses that come in tend to, like I might change up buckets and the way I set them down, and some of them will just lose it in the stall.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You didn't do that yesterday.
Yeah. And it kind of depends on who's in my barn. If I have a whole bunch of horses coming in that haven't been here before, I
Hmm.
will mix up stalls. I will mix up paddocks. I will mix up who goes out
Good.
with who.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep monkeying with the schedule and the routine so that there's nothing consistent to be expected.
Right.
And
Right.
when I have a stable group of horses, which is what I have now, the new one comes in, but the stable horses that are more balanced, that have sort of settled, it's like they don't react
They
like a
don't
lot of,
react.
yeah,
They don't feed off of that energy at all.
mm-mm. They're just like, oh, that one's yelling and running again. Huh,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Hope you
that's what
settle
I
down
have
soon. That
here.
looks exhausting.
That's like when we were working with the kids and in the elementary school, and one day a group of third graders came in. We're just bouncing off the walls, and the teachers are running around screaming, "Yeah, no, 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 sit down. You need to da 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 da." And the other Alexander teacher and I looked at each other, and we just got down on our yoga mats and did a lie down. And it took about 30 seconds to a minute for the kids to go, "Oh, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I can do that." And we didn't yell. We didn't say a word. We just changed the energy.
And I haven't owned a dog in a long time, but I have had many barn cats. Some of them just show up. Some of them I get for as barn cats from the, Humane Society. But horses and cats, I've seen them do that regularly.
Hmm.
So like I had one cat and I took in a new cat that was highly anxious and I took her because, well, Lilith, who always shows up in our podcast,
Right.
I took her because she really didn't get along with other cats. And the cat I had at the time, my barn cat, was a pretty laid back dude who had come. He was, I think, a feral cat who got put in the barn cat program at the Humane Society.
Hmm.
And he would just sit there near her, but he would never try to touch her. He would just sit there calmly. And she would run away, and then he'd kind of meander around and find another opportunity to just sit close to her. Or she would attack him. Yes, you. She would attack him and he would protect himself. He'd swipe back, but he'd never attack her.
He just claimed his space.
Yeah. And I've had horses that are really good at dealing with other horses that are under stress, and they do
Hmm.
the same thing. They go
Right.
close, but they never try to touch the other one or get too close, and they never back down. If they get attacked, they don't
Right.
run away, they don't back down, but they don't fight back. And I went, wow, that is just so interesting
Yeah.
because that really is sort of how one animal is helping another resolve stress. You go ahead and act out. I'm just going to be here.
I'm just going to be neutral.
Yeah, and I learned a ton from watching these horses
Yeah.
and cats do that. Go, oh, that's the way to do it. You don't punish, you don't fight back, you don't try to fix it, you don't try to do anything. You go, I'm just going to be here, kind of a beacon of
When you're
calm,
ready.
calm energy. I'll loan you my calm energy by being
Right.
close and ready to help if you want it. But otherwise, you do you, and I'll
Hmm.
just wait. Yeah.
And could that also be like the herd boundness too that happens?
Yeah,
Mine
herd.
aren't like that. Mine aren't like that. They can come and go as they please. They can be together or not be together.
Yeah, so if you think of how many horses get described as barn sour
Yeah,
or buddy sour, right?
right,
What that horse is telling us in no uncertain terms, I don't feel safe with you. I only feel safe at the barn, or I only feel safe with my friend. And that is
right.
a
Wow,
bitter,
that's
bitter, but honest
honest.
expression.
That's scary though. I mean, that can get you in trouble.
Well, if you start punishing it and if
Hmm.
you start demanding obedience, despite the horse has this magnetic draw back to the barn or back to the buddy, when you go, I'm going to punish that, I'm going to ignore that, or I'm going to push through that, that's where they can start to go from normal expressions of fight and flight into the more complex versions of freezing and fawning or shutdown.
Hmm.
Because it's not resolving stress, it's not
Right. It's
solving the
suppressing it.
underlying problem, it's
Yeah.
just putting a lid on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So knowing that can happen, I go, we can help horses learn how to feel safe and increase distance away from their buddy, away from the barn. That's how you resolve the problem. But I go, as long as they're anxious and tense and not calm, they're still yelling at you. I don't feel safe.
Right. And they can't be in the learning frame of mind. It's kids are the same way.
Right.
You
And
know,
we think if we just get them far enough away, they'll forget
if we
about it.
get to our goal, the human ego, if I get my horse to the arena, it'll be okay because
Yeah,
I need to do what I need to do.
right. And I'll just
Yeah.
manage this. I'll
Right.
just manage this
Ha ha ha.
because it doesn't matter how my horse feels. My horse is subjective to me. So it's
Right.
like doesn't matter. And I go until we have a revolution. I go then it matters because
And
now you're
unfortunately, that could be a painful revolution.
yes. Yeah, all of a sudden our safety is in jeopardy,
Or
right?
our pocketbook is
Right? Or our pocketbook.
with vet bills and things like that.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. And even I think with horses, there can be a lot of causes of ulcers and digestive issues and all of that. But I go, the one thing I can try to eliminate in training is, stress during work. I
Yeah.
go that
I
much.
want my horses to come to me saying, "Hi, yay, I'm so glad you're here."
Yeah, and look forward to work and
Yeah.
be able to go make mistakes and stay calm, not get all
Yes.
anxious because they made a mistake.
Right.
And or same
Or they
for
didn't know
me.
what we were asking.
Right. And same, if I make a small mistake and the horse is so on edge that they overreact, I go, that's not safe either. If
Right.
if my horse is mostly calm, not only does it benefit their health, but I go, it builds the human a huge margin of error, and we're going to make
Yes.
mistakes. But the horses are a lot more forgiving if they already feel safe with us, if
Hmm.
they feel mostly comfortable during work, if they don't fear retaliation from us, if they make a mistake, then they give us the same thing. They don't overreact because we made
Exactly.
some human mistake. Yeah. So it's really self-serving to help our horse feel safe and comfortable because
Hmm.
then we can work cooperatively. We can get what we want, and we're reducing the chance of an unsafe situation or
Yes.
ill health the more we take care of our horse's emotional state. I go, and they are gigantic emotional barometers
Yes.
because they're so sensitive to energy, and we're just not that sensitive. But when we change thoughts and we have different emotions, it changes the energy we broadcast. And the same is true for the horse, but the humans don't pick up on that level of energy as easily. We have to kind of develop a sensitivity to the horse's energy.
And
But
what energy are we bringing to the barn? I know you've done some. podcast with Stephanie, the nutritionist, and she always says you need to look at the stress level also,
Absolutely.
not just the feed program and everything else. You need to look at what's the energy in the barn, what's the stress level, what are you bringing to the equation?
Right.
Yeah.
No, and a lot of people, the mindset is work is a four-letter word. It sucks. Everybody hates work. Horses hate work. So we just sort of, every training
Get through
session
it.
is going to involve stress. It's like
Wow.
that's just part of work, and work and stress become kind of symbiotic.
Mm.
And I go,
Interesting.
it doesn't have to be that way. You can love your work, right?
Hmm.
I love my work. I
I love
work
my
all the
work too.
time.
Yeah.
And when I work with horses, I want them to love working with me. That work is not a four-letter word. Work is something we get to do together every day
Right.
or when we can.
Right.
So, so anything you want to add about fawning, or is that even something you're still kind of sorting out? Like it's very clear in my head. I've seen it a bunch, but it can be something that we go, are they being obedient with anxiety and
I
tension
can, as applying to people, I can feel that.
in
It's like a,
people's bodies?
yeah, it's like a layer of protection, and I can't get past it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's there. And usually it's a trauma response. It's somebody that's come to me with quite a bit of trauma. And getting through those layers with people can take quite a while.
Yeah.
And it'll come out as a physical problem. And that's why they come see me.
Well, and the same is true with horses. That's
Yeah,
why
so
they're
it
more
really,
prone to injuries, prone to
yep,
accidents,
yep,
maybe riddled with arthritis,
yep,
digestive
spatially unaware,
issues.
running into fences for horses, but for
Hmm.
people, tripping and falling and, just
Bumping into things
bumping
or
into things. And I just
chronically
can't,
tight muscles.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of that. When I put my hands on them, I can feel that layer of protection.
Yeah.
And it just takes time to get through those layers of protection. It has to be trust, openness, allowing things to come out. I
In
always
a
have a
safe
box of
way.
tissues
Hmm.
by my table or in
Yeah,
my
or like
office.
I will put a horse on a lunge line and just say, do whatever you feel like doing.
Yeah.
The only rule is please don't attack me. Like
Yeah. Don't
just
come at me.
don't come at me,
Don't
don't
bring it
hurt
at
me.
me.
Right, but take it and do what you want with it. And it is the same thing. Like when I say an intense level of stress, we could also say trauma. It can be a
Hmm.
trauma response. It's that level where we think a horse bucking, bolting, and rearing is a horse that's way more stressed out than a push button obedient horse that is a little tight. And I go,
Good
it's
point.
actually, the horses that are still bucking and bolting and rearing and lazy and hot and acting out, they're actually in a healthier expression of stress and closer to resolving stress. Like you said, it's layers.
It's
Once
layers.
once you're in freezing and fawning, now you got layers to peel back,
Hmm.
right?
And
And it
it's their choice as to how you go through that. You know what I'm saying? You
absolutely
can't, with the humans, I found you can't force it. And even some people, because it's so scary,
to act
you know,
out. It's
yeah,
it's
because
terrifying to
I,
act
s-
out.
I
Hmm.
start peeling those layers and they might get to a layer and quit coming to me because I just can't handle it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be that long of a process to get through it.
Yeah, it is. And that's what, if we understand the hierarchy of these defensive strategies, it's directly related to the time and the layers we have to work through to
Hmm.
fully resolve stress, right? And so fight and flight, you're closer to reducing and resolving stress. if we're recognizing fawning and freezing, now we have to reduce stress to the point that fight and flight can start to come out.
Exactly. And that's what
And
I see.
then it resolves.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have to get to the acting out part.
Yep. And
Yeah.
then the most complex stress response, shutdown, it's like now it's going to take the most time and
Hmm.
sort of delicate guidance because now from shutdown you have to show any opinion at all. And it will
Exactly.
typically
And you have to
move.
accept it. You have to openly allow.
Yeah, so like to me, the first way to start recovering from shutdown is bonding
Hmm.
because now like all bonding has been turned off.
Yeah.
So just bonding with an animal, a plant, a rock, a horse, another person, it's
Exactly.
like just bonding with life again is super important as a way out. But then you go through the first reduction of stress is seeing freezing and fawning,
Right.
right? And then you're only halfway back towards resolution. Then we got to work through fight and flight before stress can fully resolve.
Right.
So that hierarchy, I go, that's why in the short term, we think we're doing a great thing and making progress when our horse is obedient but a little tense.
Hmm.
Obedient but has a tendency to be anxious, right?
Hmm.
We think we're good to go, and what's happening is we're getting farther and farther away from a healthy use of the nervous system that
Right.
that's going to come out through poor health or dangerous behavior, unsafe behavior. And I go, so we're doing that when we punish our horse, when we demand obedience, when we don't care how they feel. I go, we're just making things more complicated for us and the horse.
Right.
So recognizing those signs of fawning are super important.
Yeah.
And being like that's the other thing is, people as a trainer will say, well, my horse never did that before when they rear, buck, bolt, or start acting out. And I go, that's because it was repressed.
Yeah.
It was in there, but it was repressed. And people will freak out when a horse starts acting out because it scares them. And I go,
Hmm.
but you want that stress level can only resolve through movement. You got to
I
move.
agree.
And you got to move with
Healthy
freedom
movement.
of choice. You got
Hmm.
to have freedom of choice. You can't be punished for sort of shouting to the world how you really feel or what you really think. Whether that's through actions and behavior or verbally, it doesn't matter. It's like it's got to come out.
Right.
Yeah. And because it scares us, we don't want to see horses acting out. We don't know what to do with it, so we try to suppress it.
Same thing with our kids.
Oh, yeah, there's that too.
Another
Yes.
day for that.
Yes. Yeah. No, and it just made me laugh because I go, that's why like children who are brought up in super religious households either become that religious or completely rebel, right? And it kind of
Hmm.
goes one of two ways. And that kind of notorious rebellion from being brought up under, very intense rules of some religions, it's like, man, that lid just blows off. Yeah. It's been sitting in there for a
For a
while.
while.
Yeah. So we can see examples of fawning all over the place, but I don't think, other than passive aggressive, it's like, which sounds more like a mental illness than it does just a defensive strategy.
It's
All
just a
it is a
strategy.
defensive strategy,
It's just a
right?
strategy.
It's a
It
strategy for survival, for
I
dealing
agree.
with what you've got. And so it's resolvable. It's
It
not a
is.
big deal to resolve, but it can take some time to resolve.
Right.
So, but we can see examples of it all over the place
Hmm.
when we stop and look. So I don't know. It's an interesting topic. If you guys go look at your training, look at your horse,
Look
just,
at yourself.
yeah, or what's the undercurrent? What's the
What's the
emotional,
under conversation going on?
right?
What is the sub-level of conversation. Inner talk.
Or
Inner,
emotional energy. What
yep.
is
What
that
is it?
emotional energy that's really motivating the
What
behavior and the
the show?
movement and
Yes,
the
totally agree
actions?
with that.
Yeah. What's the motivation underneath it? Not what people
Exactly.
are doing, but what's motivating those choices.
Exactly.
Yeah. And once we take that little bit of a deeper look and kind of peek behind the curtain, it's not hard to see.
Nope.
It's not hard to see. It's just that we're kind of distracted by all the obedient behavior on the
All the
surface.
goal setting and
Yeah.
the got to do it at letter A things.
Yep. But if we look
Yep.
just below the behavior and go, what's really motivating this behavior? We'll
What are
start
they
to
trying to
see.
say?
hmm It's
Yeah,
pretty easy to
agreed.
recognize the fawning. So we better wrap it up. We've been
Yep.
yapping for a while. Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope this sort of dive into fawning
Open your
defense
eyes.
strategy is helpful. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Horse Geeks. Thanks very
Thanks,
much,
everybody.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.